Hello everyone and welcome to this review of a Clockwork Ley-Line Trilogy. This video was written by the man that is Miguel Marin, so please follow him on Twitter with the link in the description below. And we should mention that this review is based off the Japanese Switch version. Currently that's only available in Japanese, but on PC the first game in this trilogy is localized and the second and third games should follow pretty soonish. But this is the all ages version, there's no naughty stuff in here for you guys. And yeah, just keep that in mind, this is the Nintendo Switch Japanese version. There's no doubt that visual novels with a high school setting are a dime a dozen, to the point where it almost feels like it's some sort of requisite for them. Which of course leads to the question, how can one stand out when so many out there are basically doing the same thing? In the case of時計仕掛けのレイライン, localized as a Clockwork Ley-Line, the twist they chose was magic and mystery. Developed by Unison Shift Blossom, this trilogy was originally started back in 2012 and finished in 2015. It's not a series you hear being talked about that often. If I were to guess, probably due to being overshadowed by the 9 series' popularity. But after finishing it, I feel it deserves some attention, hence this review. The story begins when our protagonist Michiro receives an admission letter to a certain boarding school with a mysterious message asking him his most desired wish. He accepts and enrolls in the school with surprising ease. When he arrives, he takes a walk around the place, where a huge clock tower next to the main building catches his attention. Right then, he sees another student leaning over from the handrail of the school's first floor, who suddenly gets bumped by another student, making him lose his balance. As he is about to fall down to the ground, Michiro jumps and saves him. But in the way, he destroys an expensive-looking statue. Both of them are then summoned to the headmaster's office. As it turns out, the statue had a special role, which was to seal away some magic relics known as myths that were kept in custody within the school. These myths are artifacts that once activated can either grant the wielder unique powers or cause a plethora of inconveniences. To compensate for the trouble they have now caused, both of them are sent to work for the school's Bureau for the Investigation of Special Affairs, where they will have to search and seal once again any mist that might get out and run rampant around the school. There Michiro meets a girl named Ushio, the current sole member of the department, who begrudgingly explains to them the true nature of the school. If the mist running around wasn't enough of a supernatural bother, they will also have to deal with the school itself, which is hiding an even bigger secret. Each evening when the school clock tower chimes, the so-called Realm of the Night appears, completely transforming the school and bringing in students of the night who seem to be completely oblivious to this bizarre affair. Right from the start of the game, it throws a lot of exposition at the player, expecting you to digest it and accept all of it. During the first game, the amount of questions certainly outweigh the answers, and it can lead to the setting feeling slightly flimsy. While this is something to be expected out of the first installment of a trilogy, you will still need to go into the series with a patient, open mind. But even if the revelations might take a while to reveal themselves, the wait is easy to endure thanks to the game being held by two strong pillars, which are its premise and its characters. The focal point of the story are the myths and how the team deals with them, which lends really well to the episodic nature of the structure, with each episode focusing on a single myth at a time. During the episodes, you will be asked from time to time about what's going on to see if you are properly following the plot, and depending on how many of those questions you get right, you will be rewarded with an extra CG at the end of each game. You can sort of cheese your way through these though, since if you pick the correct answer, you'll see Ushio agreeing with you right afterwards. Now what makes this episodic structure as a whole work so well is the sheer variety between all these myths, which often force the characters into awkward and hilarious situations. I also appreciate how they don't forget about each myth once they've been dealt with. There are quite a few times where myths from previous episodes or even previous games make a reappearance, which gives the world a more cohesive feel. But of course, you can't have entertaining situations if you don't have entertaining characters, and luckily in this regard, the game does not disappoint. There's a lot of great chemistry between them, with tons of banter that never feels forced. However, I do have to say that some gags are reused quite often, which can feel repetitive, but it's never to the point of annoyance. Individually speaking, if I were to pick who are my favorites, one would have to be Adelheid, a magician from a German noble family. In other words, an exemplary Ojo-sama. She is always accompanied by her butler, who from time to time will throw all manner of verbal abuse at her, causing her to lose her composure and become all flustered. It might sound cruel when explaining like this, but the absurdity of their dialogues always makes it really amusing. I also think she has one of the funniest scenes in the entire trilogy. Simply looking at that particular event CG makes me giggle like an idiot. Another character that I wasn't expecting to enjoy as much as I did was the school headmaster, which I think some might find her annoying, but I just love the way her voice actress delivered her lines. It's almost like she's singing them. Just listening to her was a joy, as she brought so much energy to each scene she was in.
私の問いが間違っていたようだ。やった私は諦めないよ。
As for the protagonist and Oshio, the main girl, I think they made a fun couple. However, in my opinion, it felt weird that Michiru was left unvoiced, especially from the second game onwards, where the point of view of the story occasionally changes and you can see him with his own sprite. Nevertheless, the two of them had plenty of great scenes together, and Oshio's development as a character was nicely done, in particular during the final game, where she gets a lot more screen time. Speaking of the last game, the third installment in this trilogy goes for a slightly different approach to its storytelling. In order to avoid spoilers, I'm not going to go into full detail, but I will say at first it feels at odds with the previous games, almost like they rushed this part of the story, but eventually it does make sense why they did it this way. And then the ending itself skillfully uses all the foreshadowing it was sneakily planting around to deliver a satisfying conclusion where everything feels nicely wrapped up. There is, however, another thing that I found a bit puzzling at the time of playing. There was this one character that appeared in all of the previous games whose storyline was clearly building to something much bigger, but then she barely showed up in the third game. Little did I know that she was an additional character exclusive to the PS Vita release and, by extension, the Switch release as well. I think her implementation in the main story was somewhat clunky. Looking back, it feels like her scenes were unnecessary interruptions to the main plot that could have been fully condensed into a separate chapter, which in a way already does, since her main content is only unlocked after finishing the actual trilogy. That being said, her storyline was indeed enjoyable and a nice addition to the game. As far as I know, the current PC version does not include this chapter, but I don't feel like it's a massive loss. It really is nothing more than some extra content. So overall, I quite enjoyed my time with this series. I feel like it hits the right balance between mystery, romance, and comedy, backed up by great characters and really fun situations. There are some moments where the tempo slows down, but thanks to its episodic nature, the pacing itself never drags on for too long, which is praiseworthy considering the length of the trilogy as a whole. It's by no means a masterpiece or what I would call a must-read, but it's easy to recommend if you're looking for a visual novel series with a magic twist to it. An 8 out of 10. And thank you for watching. Have we whet your appetite for the English localization of this series? Will you be picking up a second game when it's finally released? Do let me know. Thanks to Miguel Marin for writing this review. Please follow him on Twitter with the links below. If you want to support us in a different way, then consider using the links below to purchase some credit for your console of choice. That really does help us out a lot. Please check out some of our other stuff. We've got a lot of stuff coming for you. We'll see you guys over there. Have a good one.
時よ止めよ